And she said, would you want that for Madeline? Would you want Madeline to feel like she couldn't go and join a gym and take an hour for herself to work out? And when she put it like that, when she asked me about a loving vision that I had for my daughter, it was incredibly different than the oppressive vision that I had for myself.
Hi, welcome to Look Again. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about a trend that has been surging recently where movies, articles, and magazines are talking about mothers or parents that regret having children. Today, joining us in this conversation, we have Nicole and Jenny.
Hi, everyone. This is my friend Jenny Rueda. She is an actress, a director, and a producer. She has a short film coming out in probably a year, I want to say. And then she's working on a full-length documentary, which will also just be really amazing and interesting. So Jenny was the one who sort of introduced us to this topic of Mommy Noir. So we were excited to have her join us here today.
Hi, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me, ladies.
Thank you so much for coming, Jenny. So just jumping right in. I think we should start by talking about specifically which movies we're talking about and what we thought they got right. So in particular, we're talking about If I Had Legs, I Would Kick You, and Night Bitch, and Hamnet as a counterpoint. The Lost Daughter. So why don't we start talking about first what the movies got right? What truth are they trying to portray?
Well, I mean, they obviously really show that being a mother is difficult, right? It can be very isolating. It can be a very lonely experience. It can be a lot more exhausting. And I don't think there's really anything in your life that prepares you for, especially those early years.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I have four little kids now, from ages 6 to 9 months, which you'll probably meet him soon because
He's literally right
he's
there.
right next to me. And so, I had my thoughts like before I had kids of what motherhood was going to be like. And then once I actually had kids myself, I realized, oh wow, nothing can prepare you for what motherhood is, especially in the early years. And I think that a lot of these films, when I look at like who made them or where they came from, I think they're like real experiences. Most of them are books that are written by female authors, directed by women that are actually living these experiences. So I don't want to judge these women. I want to understand where they're coming from and where society failed these women, maybe, and what we can do better and just look at it honestly.
I think with my upbringing, I was born in the 80s, and the 80s and 90s, I think a lot of the portrayal was to make sure that everything about being a parent was beautiful and wonderful and lovely. And it was not spoken about any hardships. Like that was taboo. We could not say that parenting is hard. We could not say that we might get depressed after having a baby. Like everything was amazing and joyful. And while it is, I think negating as a society as a whole, negating the difficulty that comes with being a parent did a huge disservice to women. We were taught that we had to just immediately be happy, immediately know how to be the best mother to that particular child, how to have it all together right from the start, and that our husbands would be loving and supportive, and that society would value us. And I think that reality, like that's not a reality. That's a fantasy. And I think that these movies allow us to see the inner monologue, the sincere, honest inner monologue of a mother that is suffering.
I push back a little bit on that, only insofar as I think I don't know that I would go so far back as to say the 80s and the 90s portrayed motherhood as perfect. I think there was definitely a shift, maybe in the later 90s, early 2000s, because I just remember we recently rewatched, I think it's not E.T., but another one of those Steven Spielberg movies about, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And I was really surprised by how messy the homes were and chaotic the homes felt. And I think this is true also about E.T., but I think that movies in the 70s and 80s, probably even further back, portray, well, not the TV shows necessarily, but there were definitely a genre of films that showed family life as being something that was that was messy and that was okay. I think there was some kind of a cultural shift in society where it stopped feeling like it was okay for things to be sort of messy and chaotic, and something suddenly became where we had to all have Pottery Barn homes, and we had that women can do it all mentality, where we were expected to not only be able to juggle a million things, but to do them all perfectly.
Mhm.
And I don't know when exactly that shift happened, but I think we're seeing the ramifications of that with the films we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Yes, and this expectation of mothers having to do it all, is that uplifting mothers or is it setting us up for failure?
It's setting us up for failure, but I also want to say that I think it's something specific to the American mom. That I mean, maybe it exists in other cultures, but anywhere I've ever traveled and have seen motherhood in other cultures, like there is so much at home help. And even like, my family's from South America, from Colombia, like my dad didn't grow up with his mom doing everything and she had 8 children, and she had two live-in nannies and that was like normal, for there. Or like we got to go to Spain to film our my short film 2 years ago, and we got to live in Spain for 2 months. And at that time, I had 3 little kids, and being immersed in the culture, I saw these women that were smoking and drinking wine in the middle of the day and had little kids running around. And these women were like, so relaxed, so put together, so beautiful. And I'm like, this is very different than the image that I have of the disheveled, stressed out, depressed or angry like American mom, And I'm like, why? What's going on? And then talking to moms there, it's like, oh no, like they have help. And they were like shocked that I didn't have as much help as they had or barely any help, because there is this mentality here that you should feel guilty if you have a cleaning lady or if you have someone help the kids during the week. Or I think it's like an American mom thing.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wonder if I wonder if part of that is just sort of our as Americans, we have sort of that, pull yourself up by the bootstraps mentality, where we feel like, we're supposed to be pioneers and we can do all these things, and so maybe our feminist movement looked different than it did maybe in Europe, and I don't even know really what it would have looked like in Europe. Was there a cultural shift there? What did that look like when women did get the right to vote and had sort of more protections in society and stuff? So.
That's a really good question. Yeah. And going back to like how it is in other countries, I was born and raised in Mexico, and in Mexico, very similar to what you're talking about, Jenny, everybody has help. Everybody has live-in help.
Yeah.
Not only help, like live-in help, they're there all the time. So the mother never has to feel like she cannot leave the home because she has kids. She always has the opportunity to leave home because she has the nanny, she has the maid, she has a chauffeur, a cook many times. And that's just very normal because not because our country is rich, but because our country is poor.
Yeah.
Our country is so poor. So the difficulty I find is that if we want all of society to get minimum wage and get an education and get better jobs, then we will immediately deplete the source of the help at home. And the truth is that this maid that is a live-in help for my mother, that's her best option. If she can make more money at Starbucks, she would. She cannot. She doesn't know how to read. She doesn't know how to write. She, of course, doesn't know how to vote. She doesn't know how to go get a job. And so her best option is to be a live-in maid or a live-in nanny. And all of these live-in maids and nannies normally also have kids that they've left at home.
I would want to figure out like how can you divide that gap? Because I agree, it is on the backs of people that are in poverty, because they are not paid enough. And you can't do that here in America. Obviously, it is for your mental health, for your sanity, to have somebody come and help you clean the house. Because thinking of these 3 films, Lost Daughter, If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, and Night Bitch, none of those women had any help in the film. And that was the whole point of the film, is they had no break.
I do want to kind of dig into the movies a little bit because I think that this is a real issue, but I also think the way it played out in the different movies irritated me or did not irritate me in different levels. And I don't, that is one thing though that I think is true. I don't understand why these are movies made by very secular people. I know in very Christian Catholic cultures, there's a lot of, stories that we tell ourselves about hiring help Why did this not come up in any of these films? These are all women who had careers, very intelligent, very successful women. Why in each of these films did they allow themselves, with all of their knowledge and their wisdom, why did they allow themselves to be in these situations where they were completely drained like that, where they were almost going crazy in some situations?
So this is actually the director's lived experience. Like I looked into it, and the director, this is her movie, like that she wrote and directed. So this is her life, which I thought was so interesting. And she is actually the woman that played the doctor in the film, if you remember, that's her. And so she's this artist from New York. And she's a post-abortive woman, and then had this child, and then who had medical issues, and then just kind of lost herself. I mean, didn't have any help. And yeah, just kind of cracked, I would say.
I think that if I had legs, I'd kick you, like you were mentioned, Jenny. This mother that has this child that has to be constantly monitored and taken care of because she has these specific needs, which became incredibly overwhelming for the mother. And you can see her break down little by little by little by little until she gets to the cliff where she just like collapses.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, we don't see any help, but also interestingly enough, the husband is traveling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Yeah.
husband is traveling, the mother's alone with this incredibly difficult situation.
Mhm.
And I think that what the movie gets right is to help us, the viewer, understand and feel the psychological torment she's going through.
Mhm.
Being
Mhm.
alone, there's like a hole in the ceiling of her where she was living, and her husband won't fix it. The handyman won't fix it, so she has to move out. So she's in a hotel where she's trying to feed her child.
Mhm.
It's just too much. It's completely and totally overwhelming. And I think that, yes, on the one hand, it's a breakdown of society. Like, society as a whole failed that family.
Yeah.
We did not help her enough. So, parenting is for, it gives you purpose and it gives you meaning, and there's a reason. And that whole purpose, meaning, and reason is the child, the person you're taking care of. And when you eliminate that and you just make it a burden, you take away the whole reason we're doing what we're doing. So,
Yeah.
and like you said, we never see the face of the husband until the last scene. So, why do you think the director chose that? There's only kind of like 3 or 4 main characters, and one of them is this mom who's a therapist who's breaking down. The second one is her therapist, who's Conan O'Brien, who kind of listens to her and kind of doesn't. And then the third one is her patient, who I thought was really interesting, that the patient was a mom with
Yeah.
postpartum depression who abandons her baby
Yeah.
with this therapist.
Mhm.
So and we also didn't really see that baby that the mom abandons. Remember, the baby's covered up. And
Yeah.
then the fourth main character is like the hotel worker that is constantly providing her the weed and the alcohol. So it's like, why did the director choose to have these 4 people have a face and then choose all the other characters in her life to not have a face?
I mean, it feels like it's all about her, which is like Lost Daughter has similar kind of themes to it, it seems like it's just all about her. It just seems very selfish to me. Where yeah, Lost Daughter felt like that too. It was just this very selfish woman, that is not happy like where she is and what she's doing, and like wants to have this career, and then just like she calls herself an unnatural mother, in that film. And then she abandons her kids and leaves them when they're like 4 and 6 years old. Like she runs away and then doesn't really raise them. And then,
But I wonder, Jenny, as a director, do you think that the intention of the director was for us to think that to have these kinds of judgments about her? That was sort of what I was wondering, because I felt that about her, but I also sort of thought, was this intentional? And I wonder particularly about If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, because, like you said, this was her real experience.
in my opinion, it just seems like this cathartic like release of all this emotion, this experience of like, this is what I experienced, this is my story. Like, yeah, you don't see the other characters. It's just me. This is me. Like you're gonna see me and what I
Mm.
experienced. Um, that's how I interpreted it.
Interesting.
Which to me, I kind of think that when you're going through it, like if I had legs, I'd kick you. When you're living that, when you're the mother with the disabled child and the husband that's traveling and the landlord that won't fix your ceiling, I feel like your experience is I am invisible.
Mhm.
I am invisible to the world. My needs, my emotions, my life is worthless. I'm
Mhm.
not making a difference. My daughter's not getting better. The ceiling's not getting better. My husband doesn't appreciate me. My therapist doesn't see me. Even my own patients don't recognize that I'm a disaster and they give me their baby. Like, I am invisible. And then the whole movie is taking away the invisible element of my life and putting it so up front and center that you can no longer ignore me. You
Mhm.
can no longer ignore my needs, ignore my trials. You can no longer ignore what I do as a mother when the machine is beeping at night over and over and over again, and I have to stand up and change the machine for my daughter. That nobody sees that. Nobody sees that in the darkness, in the loneliness of a hotel room when I'm all alone, I'm exhausted. But I'm going to make a movie where you can see it. And I will cease to be invisible, and my needs will be actually at least understood. Maybe not admired, but at least understood.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mostly agree with you. I wonder if the director's intention was even that far because I think that's right. I think she wanted to put out there what that actually felt like. And I think that's probably why it resonates so strongly with women because I think we all have had that experience. But I think, is that an empowering thing? I felt like there was a little bit more of like a sense of empowerment from you in her making that film whereas I felt like, is the idea really just for her to put it out there and to allow that experience to be something that was so impactful for her to share it in a really raw and honest way, which I think we as women, we crave that, right? We crave being seen, not even necessarily as an empowering thing, but just as this was incredibly hard and isolating experience for me. And I need to have it out there.
I've been thinking lately about what differentiates the secular mom from the Christian mom.
Mm.
What's the difference? Like, because we're all experiencing pretty much the same things. I mean, I don't have a disabled child, but in Lost Daughter, I really did identify with her sitting on the floor and her kids are like playing with her hair, and like hugging her and the frustration. I think it's like the cross and what do you do with the cross? How do you handle the cross? Do you embrace it and find joy through the suffering? Because I think that's where all these films kind of stop. Lost Daughter, If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. I think Night Bitch was different because she embraced it through her art and turned it into something, which is, I think, the goal as Christians is to turn it into something, to like offer it up. Yeah, so I've just been thinking about that a lot because I think it is hard and I think sometimes maybe even in Catholic or Christian circles we're supposed to act like it's not hard, like it's just so it's joyful and like it's great and we have this mask, and no, it's not, it's hard and we're all in this together, we're all experiencing it, and you're just lying if you're trying to act like your kids are perfect and you never get frustrated and you never lose your patience with them. Like that is just, it's bogus.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why, in a way, If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You was just about a mother, a child, and a husband, because she was just trying to put out there this very relatable experience. And I think we all as Christian women can relate to that feeling of being overwhelmed and being so exhausted and then finding comfort in, crap TV or, in her situation, sitting in a field behind the hotel and getting high and drunk and stuff. I mean, that's a little outside, but like just feeling so exhausted, you need to do something to just kind of
Yeah.
tune out and feel better. I think Night Bitch is an interesting film because I resonated with. I thought If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You was such an intense message, and I resonated with it a lot. But the ending felt sort of like a letdown in a way that I couldn't relate to.
Yeah.
Whereas I felt like Night Bitch, I had sort of the opposite reaction. Most of the film, I was repulsed The whole her turning into a dog thing was really disgusting to me. But the ending was beautiful.
Yes.
I loved that film.
Yeah.
So,
And she had another child. I love that.
yeah.
I love that she was like, it's so hard and it's so difficult, but it's so beautiful. I'm gonna do this again. Like it's worth it. And I think that is the truth. It's like it is so hard and it's so difficult, but it is worth it.
Hmm.
And, you know, doing it again.
And I think that something that happens is that when we have a problem, if we cannot name the problem, we cannot solve the problem.
Mm,
So
Yeah.
something that happens with "If I had legs, I'd kick you" is that it is very clearly naming the problem. Let me show you the problem of being invisible, of being alone, of not having support, of having a mental breakdown. Let me show you the problem. And it doesn't show you the solution.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
then if we go to the movie of The Lost Daughter, it shows you the problem of the mother losing her intellectual identity and being frustrated with the kids. And
Hmm.
then she goes to such an extreme to say, I'm just going to abandon them because I can no longer marry my life as a mother with my life with intellectual pursuit.
Yeah.
And then our third film, Night Bitch, just to give a little bit of context, it's an artist that becomes a mother and decides to be a stay at home mom because she wants to be a stay at home mom, and she tells her husband she wants to be a stay at home mom and he supports her. And then, in being a stay at home mom and abandoning her art and only focusing on the child, she starts to feel like a female dog that all she has to do in her life is like milk the baby and just give to her baby. And she loses her identity, her meaning in life outside of being a mother. And it's the breakdown of her marriage and of her relationship with herself. Like you said, and sometimes in Catholic Christian circles, because I embrace the cross and because I offer this up, I cannot name it as a problem. And we'll not get solutions if we can't name the problem.
Yeah.
So the night bitch comes and names the problem,
Hmm.
but it names the solutions,
Yes.
which is what makes it beautiful. So when it names the solutions, I'd love to hear your thoughts, Jenny. Why did the director decide to make the mother identify with a female dog in becoming the dog? And then why did the director decide to portray all of this evolution? She becomes a dog and then she becomes her true self at the end.
I think there is a metamorphosis that happens when you become a mother. Like there is the old you and then the new you as a mom. And I very specifically like remember the moment when was giving birth to my first child. There was a moment where like I'm gonna tear up, but like I thought I was gonna die. I was like, and I almost felt like I did die, like as I was pushing him out, I remember like looking up and I was like, this is it, I'm dying. And then like, almost coming back to life. And I think I did. My old self did die in a way, and I was reborn as a mom. And it was very hard in the beginning because it's like, who am I? What am I? I don't recognize myself. I don't recognize my body. I don't recognize my emotions. I don't like, and so rediscovering like who that is, who you are as a mom, from day one and your baby's day one, and you're both like trying to figure this out together. It is this like metamorphosis, like a butterfly. And for her, she embraced it. She embraced her dogness, if you want to say. And then found herself as a new artist, like a new reborn that like had more meaning and more significance and more depth to her. Like even when she's sitting at that dinner table with all these artists that I don't think have any children and they're just so vacuous and they're just talking about food and talking about this and that, and she's just like, this is not me anymore. Like I don't identify with this world anymore. Then she finds like her voice and she makes art that I think is probably even more beautiful than it was before because she embraced this like new person that she was.
Yeah, and Dr. Kennedy, Dr. Becky Kennedy, a
Mhm.
child psychologist, she often says that if you ask somebody, what do you think about resilience? They'll say, resilience is good, it's great. I want to be resilient, I want my kids to be resilient. But then if you ask, what does becoming resilient feel like?
Mm.
It's harder. Motherhood is the same way. Being a mother is awesome,
Yeah.
Becoming a mother is really hard. And
Mhm.
that metamorphosis of like having the baby, dying to your old self,
Yeah.
being like brand, like two people are born in that room, the
Hmm.
baby and the mother.
Yes.
You were born to this new life, to this new vocation, where I think that most of our life, until we become a mother, it's kind of all about me. Like, what do I want to study in college? Where do I want to go for lunch today? What do I want to do today? And then as soon as you become a mother, it's all about them. Like,
Hmm.
when are they going to eat? When are they going to nap? Is their diaper dirty? Are they sleeping? Like, it's all about them. And that makes you a happier, more fulfilled person. But in achieving that journey of becoming happier and more fulfilled, that journey is hard.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's really hard. And I think it's okay to name it and to say, this is hard.
Yeah.
And I love being a mother and I love my children and I'm really suffering. And I've lost my identity.
Yeah.
It's okay to find ways to make it easier. I don't think we have to make things as difficult as they are for most women today. For some reason, this idea that no, we will be better people if we overcome this really difficult thing. Well, you'll be a better mother if you're kind and gentle now because you've actually done things that help nourish you so that you can be that kind and gentle mother. And that's why I agree. I loved Night Bitch. I loved that the happy ending of Night Bitch is that she found a way to feel fed through her art and create something that incorporated this new stage in life. And she could really embrace that new stage in life and not just feel like she was dying to herself all the time and dying to everyone around her and feeling unsatisfied. She could acknowledge that she had felt unsatisfied and do something really beautiful and creative and then be open to more life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what do you think, like, if we could point out what the director did in Night Bitch to show us kind of the solution? What was the solution to the problem?
I was talking to my husband the other day. I was meditating on, God says, be fruitful and multiply, and we see that a lot in our faith or in our community, fruitful and multiply. But then there's some people or people that I've seen that like be fruitful and multiply, but then they're like kind of miserable. They're not joyful. They're not happy. It's almost as if like you are um throwing a dinner party for your friend and the whole time you're angry and you're upset and you know kind of with God like, look, I threw this amazing birthday party for you, but it stressed me out so much. I'm so angry. I just did it
Yeah.
because this is what you wanted, or I did this for you instead of throwing the dinner party with joy.
Maybe having a simpler dinner party, but
Yeah.
being a pleasant host.
Yeah.
Right. It used to be when I used to host Thanksgiving or the holidays, I would always make everyone get dressed up and we would have the fanciest food. But it was so stressful because everyone had to get dressed up and the table had to be perfect and like
Yeah.
everybody was working their asses off. And then by the time we sat down and ate, everybody was exhausted
Yeah.
and miserable. And then one year I just decided, you know what, I would rather just have it be simple and have everybody have a good time and everybody did. It was really funny afterwards. We had friends over and stuff, and family and stuff, and the kids were all saying afterwards, like that was such a good time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that God doesn't want us to be fruitful so that we're miserable, but we're creating more life, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't want that perfect dinner party that looks great and has all the courses, but sucks because everyone's unhappy. He wants us to be joyful people. He wants us to be joyful Christians.
Yeah.
We're meant to have a village, we're meant to ask for help, and to normalize asking for help. It's just, we're gonna help each other out.
Yeah.
We, as mothers, we wanna be there for our children, but we're not gonna abandon our intellectual pursuit. So, how can we make that possible? So, can we come up with solutions? Like, for example, in Night Bitch, her solution was first she named it and she said it to her husband. She said, like, I can't believe you don't see what's happening to me. You let me give up my career way too easily. I told you I want to be a stay-at-home mom and you were like, fine, that's great. And she's like, you should have fought back. You should have fought for me, for my career, just like I fight for you in your career. And I think that's like making the husband part of the equation, right? So we're a team and I'm going to care about your career and you should care about mine, even if I'm a stay-at-home mom. And then tapping into the community. and see that we can all help each other, and see the person that just had a baby or the person that has little kids and see how we can help them. Because I think that the movies portray extremes. But if we don't want to go to the extreme and we want to be in the middle and we want to find a solution, I think there's things we can do.
Let's look again at Mommy Noir. Why is this such a popular thing right now? I think we're saying we have the problem that we're naming is that women are stressed out and stretched too thin, and maybe not even recognizing that they are stressed out and stretched too thin. And so, yeah, so we're coming up with these solutions. So first naming that problem, then what are the solutions? I mean, if I'm thinking in particular about these movies, because I know my personal experience and what was stressful, but if I'm looking at it in these movies, Night Bitch and If I Had Legs and Lost Daughter, part of the problem also I think all those things you mentioned, Mariana, are 100% correct. I think also, though, one of the solutions has to be all of these women were raising really, in my opinion, selfish kids because they were not training these kids to become responsible adults. Even when the kids are little, you should be teaching the kids that there are boundaries and that they have, giving them a certain amount of responsibility. And I think all of those things are okay. Even with Night Bitch, when she had the one little boy, there should be a firm rule about where he sleeps and what time he goes to sleep. The fact that he's still sleeping in their bed and that he needs to be read to until he conks out, like, you are creating something that's incredibly difficult for yourself. So I think at some point also the idea of what it means to parent well has shifted, where we are just 100% catering to the child instead of raising children to become responsible adults. So I would say that's one of the problems that has to be addressed as well.
And do you think you see that in all three movies? Because I think that's a really valid point. That the problem is that when the pendulum has swung, where before like children are to be seen and not heard, and always with a nanny, and then we eliminate the nanny, and now everything's about the children's needs, and we're going to center our life around the child. I think in response to the previous one of children always being with the nanny and never with the parents. So do you think that all three movies portray that? Because I'm thinking about If I Had Legs, do you think the mother is also putting the child's selfishness above the mother's well-being?
Yeah, wasn't there? She wanted like
It was a hamster,
a hamster. Yeah.
some weird little rodent
Yeah,
lived in a
rat.
box.
Yeah, like no,
Yeah.
no, like absolutely not.
Yeah. She said no, and the kid kept pushing and
Yeah,
pushing,
so
and finally she gave in. That's crappy parenting.
yeah,
You do not teach your child, if I nag and nag and nag,
yeah,
I'll get what I want.
yeah.
Terrible. Yeah, and in The Lost Daughter, with the two girls, like there wasn't enough boundaries for the mother to be able to write, and
Yeah,
for the daughters to leave her alone.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And the way she handled when the little girl drew all over her precious doll, I get that that would be upsetting, but
yeah.
she just threw the doll out the window. Her kids were having maybe strong reactions to things, but she also was having strong reactions to things. Yeah, there should have been boundaries so that the kids could have known, there's quiet time in the afternoon and mom's going to be quiet in her room and you're going to be quiet in your room,
Yeah.
or there will be a consequence.
We don't really right now have like good examples of how to parent and work part-time, or like how to marry those two things together. Like it seems a very like either or culture of like you either are working and you're a working mom and there's all this guilt and drama around that, or you're a stay-at-home mom. And then people don't really know how to be stay-at-home mom either, you know. I think that you think, oh, stay-at-home mom means I'm the cleaning lady, I'm 100% caretaker for the children. Like it means we have no help because I'm stay-at-home mom. And I don't think that that is true, you know, or healthy.
Yeah, I think that's right. And there really aren't a lot of mentors, right? There aren't
Yeah.
all these women were doing this on their own. And to your point, Mariana, earlier about we should be near family and we should be getting help from family. A mother who'd already been through this could have said, well, you need to put that kid down for a nap. You need to tell that girl, no, you cannot have weird rodent thing living in a box in your room. It's okay for you to have those kind of boundaries. And all these women seemed so sort of overwhelmed by what their current situation was that they didn't have anyone telling them, no, this is how you do this, right?
Mm.
And it's the most important job you're possibly going to do. None of them did what they were doing before they were mothers. They went through years of schooling and training, and they
Yeah.
probably worked as interns and stuff like that. And then that's the thing with being a mother. If you, we, all these women right now who are saying they hate being a mother and they love their kids, but they hate being a mother, no one's trained them to do it. So obviously they hate it because they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
There's no one around telling them how to do this thing. The majority of people don't have close friends anymore. So they go online for the only kind of resource they can for an outlet for their frustration. And it's just other people saying, yeah, I hate being a mother. So where do they go? Or they have like ballerina farm girl who's like got nine and she's a multimillionaire and she makes everything look perfect. And you
Which
don't
is like fake
totally fake.
also.
Totally fake.
Because she has help,
Yeah.
but she doesn't show the help, and she homeschools, but she has people like tutoring, and so it's like then you're idealizing what stay-at-home mom is.
Right.
It's like just gonna be prancing around with my milkmaid dresses and like making sourdough all day.
Right.
And then you get to the reality of like motherhood and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. Like people are pooping their pants and smearing it on the walls. Well, I'm trying to make sourdough. Like,
Where was that on the ballerina
yeah.
farm?
Was lied to.
So I guess my question is it possible? Do you think it's possible to be a stay-at-home mom with little kids and have intellectual balance, emotional health? Or is it that we just surrender that part of our lives for the first 5 years of our kids and then we recover it afterwards?
I I I don't think it would be healthy to just like abandon yourself for 5 years. I think that it's important for yourself and for your kids to maintain some sort of outlet or like intellectual or creative for yourself. I don't think that that's selfish to say that. I think it's important to do that so that your kids also can see that you have an interest also, in those early years. Mom's reading a book, mom is painting, mom's doing ceramics.
So do you think the society that we currently have would support that? Like our current society, does it support mothers having that option?
Do you mean our society at large, or do you mean our Christian Catholic society?
Oh, our
Both.
Christian Catholic society, yes. But like
Hmm.
society at large, no.
Oh, that's funny. I thought the exact opposite.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me more.
Okay.
Yeah, say more, Nicole.
I go to the bar method most of the time. And I feel like if I told those women I have kids at home and their dad is watching them while I work out or I've got a nanny or something, they wouldn't blink. But if I went to Rosary Group or Park Day and I had a bunch of littles and I said, yeah, I think I'm going to get a nanny so I can work part-time, I think maybe they wouldn't say it to my face, but I feel like there would be quite a few women in that room who would judge me. I think that that's true. And I say that also as a woman who I was very judgmental when my kids were little and I did not work. And I thought it was not okay to work when my kids were little. And I think that made things harder on myself than it needed to be. I think now I look back and I would have given my younger mom self a lot more grace. But I think Catholic and Christian moms, I think there's a lot of judgments about women working. I don't know, that's my opinion. But why do you think the world would be more judgmental?
About like
Having a nanny or getting a part-time?
oh, I don't see like spaces that are like for family.
Oh,
In Spain, for example, when we got to go, there would be like fancy restaurants, not McDonald's. Like it was a fancy restaurant with wine and like beautiful food. And then in the basement, there was a whole kids area, like with people that would watch the kids, and there'd be like they'd play movies and they have popcorn and activities and like clowns and stuff while you are upstairs like having dinner with your spouse, and then the kids are downstairs. Or there's like plazas with playgrounds and your date night. I mean, here it's just so complicated. I just don't feel like spaces or places are friendly to kids or families, and you just get a lot of looks and a lot of stares, and then you just feel like isolated into your house.
yeah.
And you're like, we can't. Where it would be
It's
so nice if there was like a restaurant that wasn't a McDonald's playground, and I could go with a girlfriend and say, let's go get coffee while the kids are playing,
Mhm.
or let's go get lunch and talk, and have a glass of wine or something
Mhm.
while the kids are playing in the playground, or we take them to this place. It just feels like kids are not to be seen.
I think everything you're saying is true, but I feel like what we're saying is that society is more judgmental of children and that
Hmm.
Christian society is more judgmental of work.
Yes. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Nicole, I wanted to go back to something that you mentioned. You said that when you were a young mother, you were very judgmental of mothers that worked, and
Hmm.
you thought
Yeah.
that
They're
you could
terrible.
not do it. What?
I think I'm just making a joke. Go ahead.
I just want to know what your thoughts are on that currently, and if they've evolved, how they've evolved, and what did you think both like when you were young, like if you could bring us back to your thoughts when you were a young mother and you had just had kids, what was your train of thought then regarding working at home or working outside of the home, and what your thoughts are now, and how did you see your thoughts portrayed in the movies?
When the kids were young, I think I was a lot like the moms in these movies.
Hmm.
I did not really have any help. I felt like, and I think because my mom, my parents both worked all the time, we had a lot of nannies and stuff. So I didn't really have an example of a mom at home. And so when I converted to Catholicism and I was going to have this large family, and I started having a large family, I definitely felt like, okay, I want to be really intentional about being a mom. I had this idea about what a Catholic mom would look like. And so I felt a lot of those kind of that heaviness, a judgmentalness on the outside, but also a heaviness on the inside that I couldn't work out or I couldn't, go out with friends. Like Ray and I were good about making time for dates because I always thought that our marriage was really important and that was something I wanted to also prioritize. But I'll share something that I shared with Jenny a couple of nights ago. A friend came to visit and she was telling me I should join a gym. And she was an older mother with a large family and she was about 10 years older than I was. And I was saying, I don't really want to put my kids in childcare to go work out. Like I can work out around them here. We go for walks and stuff. And she said, my oldest daughter's name is Madeline, and she said, would you want that for Madeline? Would you want Madeline to feel like she couldn't go and join a gym and take an hour for herself to work out? And when she put it like that, when she asked me about a loving vision that I had for my daughter, it was incredibly different than the oppressive vision that I had for myself.
Mm.
So when I looked at someone that I truly loved, I wanted something else for her and I wanted to model something else for her. And I realized also in that I was not practicing self-love. I was not showing that loving vision for myself. And one of the things, which is actually very anti-Catholic, because one of the things that our Lord asks of us is love your neighbor as yourself. But if you are not really loving yourself, you do not have love to give to your neighbor. And that's why it's very easy to then have all these judgments about your neighbor as well. Well, she shouldn't be working. She shouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z because you are an unhappy person. And so it really took that very good friend saying that hard thing to me to help me to realize this was not a good example. Even if I just do it out of love for my children, I have to do something different.
And how do you feel today?
Now I totally judge working women. They're the worst. No, now I really just think everyone should try to raise their children well. We have an obligation to try to raise saints, not just good kids, but we have an obligation to raise saints. But how you do that depends on you, and it depends on your family and your situation, and none of us should judge anyone else. What we really should do is try to just be helpful to each other in accomplishing that goal. And in whatever way that looks like, right? Like maybe you have a friend who just needs support. Maybe you have a friend who needs you to take her out for a drink or something, or somebody who needs to, get motivated to go to the bar method at 6:30 in the morning. Whatever that might look like, we should be loving and supporting each other and lifting each other up.
Yeah, and I think that the tricky thing is what you mentioned, where you said, I thought that out of love for my children, I would not go to the gym. I would not put them in the childcare of the gym because I love my children so much.
Yeah.
And so the tricky thing is, how do you know, or how do we establish, and we can see it in the movie, like I was saying, it's kind of like little by little, and then all of a sudden there's a cliff. Like, how do you know when what you're doing as a mother for your children is love? And how do you know when it's no longer love, but more like treating You're treating yourself how you would not want your daughter to treat herself, like you were saying about Madge.
They're dumb or something.
Yes, exactly. Like if you tell me like, well, I did it out of love for my kids. Well, we
Yeah.
all agree that being loving towards our kids and doing things out of love for our kids is great, but where do you draw the line? Should
Yeah.
a mother never leave her home because she loves her child? And if she leaves the home, then is she being unloving towards her child? And how do you decide where that line is?
Yeah. I mean, I think prioritizing your kids above your work, like, always helps me. That's more important to me. Being mindful of, like, for me, how many hours, I work a week. And then, yeah, because it's going to be different, like Nicole said, for every person, for every mom, and like your state in life, it's different. And so just, I don't ever want to be in a situation where, like, I gave everything to my children and then they leave me
Hmm.
because they leave, and then be bitter and angry that, like, I gave everything to you and you left. Then they're just like clutching onto them because they poured their entire identity into them. And it's like, that's not healthy?
And at the same time, like the movie shows us the other extreme, right? Where like they pour so much into their identity that they leave the child. So it seems like it's hard to find the balance, which really brings us to the fourth movie we wanted to talk about, which is kind of the counterpart to these three movies,
Hmm.
which is Hamnet. And just a quick description, Hamnet is the story of the wife of Shakespeare, who they have twins, and she gives her whole life to her children, and then one of the children passes away and she's emotionally broken, and she and her husband do not handle it like together. It breaks the relationship for most of the movie until the end. And I think I really want to hear first, Nicole, your thoughts, since I know that you appreciated the movie, and
I
then we
loved
can hear
it.
what Jenny's counterpoint.
I loved that film. I thought it was really beautiful, and part of what I loved about it was she was not a mother who seemed like she felt put upon. She loved being with her children, but she incorporated her children in the things that she loved. She would take them out in nature. The father was a playwright, so they would like act out plays together. They were, helpful in the home. They were living a very full and beautiful life. The one thing that was missing was he desperately needed not to live there because he wanted so much to pursue this career that he had that, obviously we know worked out for him. But she really, really resisted leaving the home, leaving where they lived, because she had this very strong sense. And in the movie, it's almost like a truth to her that she can't leave the home where they live because something bad will happen to one of her kids. So she was living as if that was 100% a truth. I thought she portrayed it really beautifully. I thought in that film, the struggle was more about how to deal with grief in a marriage.
I just thought she was so childlike and immature in so many parts of the movie. And there was just a lot of choices that were made by the director, who I love. I love Chloe Zhao. I think that was just very distracting to me, was her acting, which I didn't care for, which I know she won the award, so what do I know? But yeah, the story was good, but I thought it was more about like a father processing his grief and like what to make of this grief and turning it into art than her grief. Yeah, so I didn't think that Hamnet was about her, but was more about, yeah, Shakespeare and like what he does with his grief and how he processes it. Yeah.
Something that I thought was really fun was that the actress, the mother in Hamnet, is the same actress as the mother in The Lost Daughter. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I think we can see again the third, like our fourth movie, where we see the mother breaking down. Again, the husband is not there. Just like in the other three movies. Like in every single movie, the portrayal is a mother that's dealing with all of this alone. Like the common theme in my mind is alone by myself. I've got to figure this out. And I think that that leads us to the solution of the number one solution is relationships.
I did think that one of the things I liked that was distinct in Hamnet was she did have a lot of support from her in-laws.
Hmm.
Her mother-in-law was amazing, and she rejected her initially. She did not think she was a good match for her son, But then once they got married, she was all in and she was fantastic. And it shows also just the huge difference. She would have been lost without that woman. And so to your point, yeah, community is so incredibly important. And I think part of what Hamnet also though was showing in a couple dealing with grief is that's how grief feels. It feels very, very isolating. We had a son in the hospital for 12 weeks. He was probably going to die, which was what we were told. And he didn't, thank God. But it was incredibly difficult on the marriage. It's unavoidable that it be a strain. And so I think you need to reach out and have that, make that effort to be more together, but it's a really difficult thing when you're dealing in those high stress situations. And to lose a child and for her to have been all alone like that was heartbreaking. I thought it was one of the most difficult movies I've watched.
So, Nicole, for some of us that have not gone through something like that, it strikes me as difficult to understand why having your son in the hospital for 12 weeks or having the loss of a child would bring such strain on the marriage, when my initial thought is to think that's the moment you're going to grow closer together because you're facing this incredibly hard challenge together. But I have heard a lot from people that have done it that it actually tears marriages apart. Like, it's really hard. Can you share a little bit more with us, like why that happens for those of us that haven't gone through something like that?
I think first of all, just knowing you can't fix it. It's something that is it's a risk that's going to happen. And in fact, there was a counselor at the hospital where our son was who said she had never seen a marriage negatively affected by this kind of a trauma. And it doesn't mean that every marriage has to fall apart, but that her point was basically like, don't go into this thinking you don't need therapy. You're going to need someone else to talk to because this is going to be incredibly hard. Because I was sort of poo-pooing her, like, we're fine. We don't need therapy. We're great.
We're Christian.
We had a good marriage. We had not come across anything, really difficult up to that point. But I think that it's scary, it's stressful, it's heartbreaking. And when we feel all those things, we're so completely out of control that we want someone to blame, someone to be responsible. Because then it's because, like in Hamnet, you weren't there. You have no idea what I experienced because you weren't there. And so she can control that. She can focus all her fear and hurt and anger on him. And I think, we're men and women deal with things differently. And so I think a lot of times for me, Ray would act in a way that I felt like didn't occur to me as grief. When we were struggling with things, when I was afraid and stuff like that, he would handle things very differently than I did, and I would handle things differently than he did. And so we couldn't understand each other when I think we needed someone to understand us the most. So, yeah, but again, I think that goes back to, you need community.
I think I was just going to end with motherhood can be disorienting and exhausting and lonely, but it can also be deeply meaningful. And the stories we tell about motherhood matter, and we have to be here for each other, for our friends, and for our society as a whole.
More help and more asking honestly for help and
Yes.
time for yourself.
Right.
Normalize asking for the help and less guilt.
Yeah.
We're not doing it all on our own.
Start making real friends. Something that's interesting to you. Join a knitting club.
Thank you,
Thanks
Jenny,
for
for joining us
joining us
today.
today.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care.